There are moments when your own mind feels like a storm. Thoughts racing, doubts shouting, fears looping endlessly. You try to quiet them, but they only grow louder. You start believing them, identifying with them, letting them dictate who you are. I'm not good enough. I'll never change. Something's wrong with me. But what if none of that is true? What if your thoughts are not you? They're just passing clouds across the sky of your mind. You see, the human mind is a magnificent storyteller. It creates narratives, projections, fears, and dreams, all from tiny fragments of experience. Psychology tells us that the average person has between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are repetitive, and a large number of them are negative. But repetition doesn't equal truth. Just because a thought visits often doesn't mean it belongs. The problem isn't the thought, it's our attachment to it. Imagine this. You're standing under a vast blue sky. Clouds form, drift, and disappear. You don't chase them, you don't argue with them, you don't hold them in place. You simply watch. That's what awareness feels like. That's what peace feels like. But most of us forget we're the sky, not the storm. We identify so deeply with our mental weather that we forget our vastness. Spiritually and psychologically, detachment from thought is the first step toward freedom. The mind loves movement. It feeds on reaction. But awareness dissolves its power. When you simply notice a thought instead of becoming it, it loses its grip. You shift from being the thinker to being the witness. That's where peace begins. You were never meant to silence your mind, only to stop believing every word it says. Your thoughts are visitors, not verdicts. They come and go. But you remain. You are the still sky that holds them all. Patient, spacious, untouched. So next time your mind screams, you're failing, you're behind, you're not enough, take a breath and look up. Remind yourself, these are just clouds. Let them drift. Because the truth of who you are doesn't move with the storm. It shines behind it. Every thought begins as a spark, a fragment of memory, a flash of perception, a ripple from your subconscious trying to make sense of the world. Most of them are harmless, small waves on the surface of your awareness. But when you attach meaning to them, when you give them identity and power, they grow into storms. A single thought like "I'm not enough" can become a whole identity. It can shape your confidence, your relationships, your decisions, your future. That's how thought becomes suffering, not by existing, but by being believed. Psychology calls this cognitive fusion, the moment when your mind convinces you that what you think is who you are. The mind says, "I'm a failure," and instead of hearing it as a passing message, you accept it as a label. You stop being a human, having a thought, and start being a thought, having a human. But once you start seeing the pattern, everything changes. You realize that thoughts are not facts. They're just mental weather. They move through. You don't have to hold them. This realization doesn't mean ignoring your mind. It means observing it. It means stepping back into awareness, the part of you that's always watching. You know that voice that says, "This isn't working," or "I'm not good enough." If you can hear it, that means you're not it. There's a deeper, quieter self that notices the noise. That's the true you, the observer, not the storm. Spiritually, this is the essence of every wisdom tradition. The mystics called it detachment. The monks called it mindfulness. Norman Vincent Peale called it the renewal of the mind. They all point to the same truth. Peace doesn't come from controlling your thoughts. It comes from not being controlled by them. Ask yourself, how many thoughts today have I mistaken for truth? You will realize most of them were temporary moods. The worry that felt unbearable in the morning had already faded by afternoon. The fear that kept you up last night disappeared the moment you started laughing with a friend. That's how fleeting thought really is. From a scientific perspective, every thought is just an electrochemical signal. It's not a prophecy, it's a pattern. And patterns can change. Your mind is like a radio with thousands of channels. You can't stop it from broadcasting, but you can choose what to listen to. Most of us have been tuned into the frequency of fear for so long that peace feels foreign. But with awareness, you can retune the dial. It starts small. When a negative thought appears, instead of reacting, just name it. Oh, that's anxiety. That's judgment. That's fear. Naming it separates you from it. It stops being you and becomes it. The moment you do that, your brain shifts. You move from emotional reactivity to conscious choice. This is called cognitive diffusion, the act of noticing your thoughts without letting them define you. Spiritually, this is what it means to let clouds pass. You don't chase them. You don't paint the sky gray because of them. You just wait. And when you wait long enough, they move. They always move. Every storm does. You begin to notice something profound. Your thoughts change all the time, yet the awareness behind them doesn't. That's who you truly are. Constant, quiet, unchanging. You've mistaken the clouds for the sky, the weather for the world. But once you remember your true position as the one who observes, peace naturally returns. This shift doesn't mean your mind will stop producing noise. It means you'll stop living inside it. You'll still have fear, but fear won't have you. You'll still experience doubt, but doubt won't define you. You'll still think about the future, but you won't live imprisoned by it. Think of it like this: a river never stops flowing, but you don't have to drown in it. You can stand on the shore and watch it pass. The mind is the same. It's designed to move, to create, to process. But you are not the movement. You are the witness of it. And when you understand that, something extraordinary happens. Space appears. You start feeling gaps between thoughts, tiny moments of stillness. That's where real peace lives. It's subtle at first, a pause before reacting, a moment of silence after anger, a calm breath between worries. But that pause is everything. That's the sky between the clouds. That's awareness. Over time, you begin to notice patterns, recurring thoughts that visit like familiar clouds, old fears, insecurities, judgments. But instead of fighting them, you greet them like travelers passing through. Ah, there you are again. That's not surrendering to negativity, that's mastery. Because when you stop fighting the storm, it loses its wind. The more you practice this awareness, the more your inner weather begins to clear. The clouds don't disappear, but they don't scare you anymore. You stop trying to fix the sky. You stop waiting for someday to be peaceful. You realize peace is not the absence of thought. It's the presence of awareness. So next time your mind turns against you, don't argue with it, don't drown in it, just watch, breathe, remind yourself, this thought is not me, it's just passing through. And the moment you remember that, you've already won. The turning point comes the moment you stop trying to fight your mind and start learning how to listen differently. Not every thought needs an argument. Not every fear deserves a reply. Some thoughts only need to be heard and allowed to pass. That's what mindfulness really is. Not silence, but space. The art of making room for what moves through you without becoming it. Psychology calls this acceptance without attachment. It's the practice of allowing thoughts, emotions, and sensations to arise without labeling them as good or bad. You become a compassionate observer of your inner world. You don't chase thoughts anymore. You simply witness them like clouds drifting across the sky. This isn't denial, it's maturity. It's realizing that peace doesn't come from controlling thought, but from changing your relationship with it. The human mind is wired to wander. Studies show it spends nearly half the day lost in thought, replaying the past, rehearsing the future, inventing problems that don't exist. That wandering isn't evil, it's creative energy misdirected. The mind was designed to imagine, to dream, to plan. But when imagination turns against you, it becomes worry. When memory turns obsessive, it becomes regret. When projection replaces presence, it becomes anxiety. Awareness brings those forces home. You begin to see that every thought has two sides, the content and the awareness that notices it. The content says, "I'll never be happy," but the awareness simply observes. There's a thought about unhappiness. That tiny shift is liberation. You move from living inside the story to watching it unfold. And once you start watching, the storm loses its pull. Ask yourself, what would change if I stopped believing my first reaction and waited for my calm to return? That question alone can transform your life, because most mistakes come from reaction, not reflection. Anger, fear, jealousy, they all live in that first impulse. But awareness introduces a pause, a sacred breath between stimulus and response. That breath is where wisdom lives. Norman Vincent Peale once said, "Stand back from your mind long enough, and you will find God waiting in the stillness." That's what he meant. When you stand back from thought, you step into peace. Mindfulness teaches you to notice the texture of your inner world without judgment. You start feeling your thoughts instead of fighting them. A thought of fear rises. Your heart tightens. A thought of hope appears. Your body relaxes. These are not random. They're clues. The body mirrors the mind. And by observing both, you begin to understand yourself with compassion instead of criticism. Self-compassion is essential here. When you see your thoughts as visitors, you stop treating yourself as the problem. You realize it's not "I'm broken," it's "I'm believing something painful right now." That's a huge shift. It turns shame into empathy and self-judgment into self-care. You start responding to your mind the way you would to a scared child, with calm reassurance. From a psychological standpoint, this reprograms neural pathways. The brain learns safety where it once found threat. Each time you greet a difficult thought with compassion instead of panic, you strengthen the connection between your prefrontal cortex, reason, and amygdala, emotion. Over time, fear loses authority. You build emotional intelligence, not by forcing positivity, but by developing presence. Spiritually, this is where faith deepens. You realize that just because a thought feels real doesn't mean it's true. Feelings are weather. Faith is the sky. You start trusting the deeper rhythm beneath the noise, a rhythm that whispers, "All is well even now." And when you align with that awareness, your entire energy changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That's the transition from fear to faith. When you practice this daily, thoughts begin to lose their grip. The same mind that once overwhelmed you starts to quiet naturally, not because you've silenced it, but because it's finally being heard. The mind calms when it feels seen. Awareness is the ultimate act of love. Try this simple awareness exercise. Whenever a painful thought appears, pause and label it with kindness. That's fear. That's worry. That's my mind protecting me. Then breathe deeply, slowly. Feel the breath move through your chest, grounding you in the present moment. Notice how after a few seconds, the thought already begins to fade. It was never permanent. It was passing all along. Soon you start realizing how temporary everything truly is. Thoughts, moods, emotions, even pain. They all move like weather. The only constant is the observer within you, the awareness that watches without judgment. That's your true self, your divine self, untouched by noise. Ask yourself, who am I beyond everything my mind says about me? That question breaks illusion, because once you glimpse the awareness behind thought, you can never fully believe the storm again. You'll still have difficult days, but they'll lose their power to define you. You'll start living in a kind of peace that doesn't depend on silence, a peace that coexists with sound. Norman Vincent Peale said, "Change your thoughts and you change your world." What he really meant is, learn to see them clearly, and they lose control over your world. You begin to realize that your peace was never lost. It was just buried under the noise of your own mind. As you practice observing your thoughts with faith and compassion, you slowly shift from being a thinker to being a presence, a quiet consciousness that holds everything without resistance. You still think, but you no longer drown. You still feel, but you no longer fear. The storm still comes, but it never stays. You've become the sky again, vast, steady, luminous. Freedom doesn't arrive with fanfare. It comes in quiet moments when you realize that what used to overwhelm you no longer controls you. You still have thoughts, but they don't have you. The difference is subtle, but it's everything. You can walk through a storm now without losing the sky inside you. It starts to dawn on you that your mind was never your enemy. It was just frightened. It was trying to protect you, trying to prepare you, trying to make sense of a world it could never fully control. Every negative thought, every fear, every anxious prediction was simply the mind saying, "Please don't let me get hurt again." Once you see that, compassion replaces judgment. You stop hating your thoughts and you start understanding them. That's when healing truly begins. Psychology calls this integration. When awareness and compassion meet, the moment you stop fighting your thoughts, they begin to settle. They no longer need to shout because they're finally being heard. You realize that the mind isn't a problem to solve, it's a companion to guide. It's like a child learning boundaries. When you meet it with calm, it calms with you. You begin living with a new kind of wisdom, one that doesn't chase control but values understanding. You no longer try to silence thoughts. You invite them to speak their piece and pass. Fear arises. You listen. You breathe. You thank it for its message, and then you let it go. Anger arises. You notice, you soften, you let it drift. You've stopped identifying with the passing clouds. You've become the sky again. Spiritually, this is where you touch grace, because when you no longer resist your mind, you create room for something higher to move through you. The stillness beneath thought is where divine wisdom lives, the quiet knowing that never argues, never rushes, never doubts. It whispers truths your mind can't understand, but your heart instantly recognizes. You are loved, you are safe, you are already enough. Ask yourself, what would my life feel like if I fully trusted that voice instead of the one that fears? That voice, calm, kind, and unwavering, is the real you. The one behind the mind, the one that watches, forgives, and waits. It's not an idea, it's a presence. You can feel it when you're still, when you stop trying to think your way into peace and allow peace to find you. Psychologically, this shift changes your entire state of being. Your brain begins to operate in coherence. The heart, breath, and nervous system synchronize. Scientists call it neuroplastic healing. You are literally reprogramming your mind to choose calm over chaos. The fight or flight reflex relaxes. The stress hormones subside. You start to live in alignment with the biology of peace. Spiritually, this is surrender, not to defeat, but to truth. You realize that life was never asking you to think harder, it was asking you to be more deeply. You begin to experience what many describe as flow, a state where action arises effortlessly from awareness. You no longer live by overthinking, you move by intuition. It feels like dancing instead of struggling, breathing instead of forcing. And here's the beauty: when you stop controlling your thoughts, clarity returns. Ideas become clearer, creativity sharper, relationships more harmonious. Because your inner noise no longer distorts your perception, you start seeing reality as it is, not as fear paints it. You stop projecting the past onto the present. You start living in truth, not in story. Life begins to feel lighter. You wake up and notice sunlight instead of stress. You walk slower, breathe deeper, speak softer. You stop rushing for meaning because you realize meaning is already here, in this moment, in this breath, in this awareness. Thought still comes, but it now feels like wind through trees, moving, whispering, harmless. Norman Vincent Peale said, "Change your thoughts and you change your world." But the deeper truth is, you don't even have to change them. You just have to stop clinging to them. The world changes automatically when you stop identifying with its noise. Peace doesn't need perfect thoughts, it needs clear awareness. And when you live like that, as the watcher instead of the warrior, something miraculous happens. You start feeling connected again. You see beauty in small things, the sound of rain, a child's laughter, the pause between words. Life no longer feels like something to survive. It feels like something to experience. The storms don't stop, but you stop fearing them. You stop running from your own mind. You stop believing that healing means never thinking negative thoughts again. Healing means knowing that even when the clouds return, you remain the sky. You begin to live from that vastness, steady, open, infinite. You start trusting that no matter what passes through your mind, the truth of who you are remains untouched. The clouds can't stain the sky. The thoughts can't define the soul. The sky doesn't need to fight the storm. It only needs to remember that it is bigger than it. And that's when the peace you've been chasing finally appears, not because life became quieter, but because you did. You've stopped believing every passing cloud. You've stopped being the weather. You've started being the witness. Ask yourself, can I sit beneath my thoughts and watch them drift, knowing I am the one who never moves? That is the psychology of freedom and the spirituality of faith, realizing that awareness is your truest self and everything else is just passing by. And then one morning, you wake up and something feels different. Not louder, not brighter, just lighter. The noise in your head hasn't disappeared completely, but it no longer feels like an enemy. It hums softly, like background music. You notice the thoughts coming and going, the doubts, the worries, the old voices, but they drift through you instead of pulling you down. You've stopped chasing them. You've stopped fighting them. You've remembered the truth. They were never you. This is freedom, quiet, steady, and deeply human. You begin to understand that peace was never the absence of thought, but the presence of awareness. Thoughts will always come. That's what the mind does. But now you know they don't define reality. They're passing clouds across the vast sky of your spirit. You are that sky. endless, luminous, and untouched by what moves through it. You start to move through the world differently. Someone criticizes you, and the old thoughts rise. Maybe they're right, but instead of collapsing into the story, you smile gently. You recognize it as a cloud. It floats in, then floats out. You breathe. You stay centered. You start trusting your stillness more than your storms. Psychologically, your entire system begins to recalibrate. The nervous tension that once ruled your days begins to fade. The grip of anxiety loosens. Your sleep deepens. Your body starts believing what your awareness has known all along, that it's safe here in this moment. When the mind is no longer treated as an enemy, the body stops preparing for battle. You move through life with presence instead of pressure. Spiritually, this is where you begin to experience grace in ordinary moments. Washing dishes, walking home, sitting in silence. Everything feels alive again. You notice details that used to escape you, the softness of sunlight through curtains, the rhythm of your own breathing, the sound of wind in the trees. The world didn't change, your relationship with it did. Awareness opened your eyes to what was always sacred. You start realizing that your thoughts are not obstacles to peace. They're invitations to remember it. Every time a dark thought appears, it becomes a teacher, showing you where you're still holding fear, where love still needs to enter. Even your hardest thoughts begin to soften under the warmth of awareness. Ask yourself, what if every thought was just a reminder to return home to myself? That home is not a place, it's a presence. Quiet, loving, constant. The mind wanders, but awareness waits patiently. Every breath is a doorway back. Every moment is an opportunity to choose peace again. You don't have to win against your mind. You just have to remember that you are not it. Norman Vincent Peale once said, the trouble with most of us is that we would rather be ruined by praise than saved by criticism. But the truth runs deeper. Most of us would rather believe our thoughts than question them. The path to peace isn't to stop thinking. It's to start seeing clearly. Awareness saves you by showing you what's real. You begin to understand that thought is not the problem. Attachment is. Like clouds, thoughts are beautiful when they move. It's only when we hold them, judge them, or build stories around them that they become storms. Letting them drift keeps the sky clear. Now, when fear visits, you breathe and let it pass. When worry whispers, you smile and say, I see you. When self-doubt knocks, you greet it gently, then release it. You no longer fear your inner world. You flow with it. And the more you flow, the more grace flows through you. Faith at its highest expression is trust in that flow. It's knowing that the clouds will come, but the sky will remain. It's remembering that awareness, the presence of God within, is always larger than the storms of the mind. You begin to feel guided, protected, and carried by something greater than thought. There's a timeless peace in this awareness. You don't need to prove it, or explain it, or hold on to it. You just live it quietly, naturally, moment to moment. Even when thoughts rise like thunder, you know this will pass. You no longer run from the rain. You walk through it, knowing the sun is already on its way. And that's the miracle. The world hasn't changed, but the way you see it has. You no longer live inside your thoughts. You live within awareness. You're not the voice in your head. You're the silence behind it. You're not the cloud. You're the sky. So when the mind storms again, and it will smile, watch, wait, let it move, because you know now that peace was never something to achieve, it was something to remember. You've always been the sky. You've always been whole. You've always been free. And as you walk through the rest of your life with that truth in your heart, you'll notice the clouds come, but they never stay. They can't, because you are what remains when they pass. You are the stillness after the storm. You are the blue sky that never leaves.